While scientists around the world experiment with alternative fuels, one group is seeking to make vehicles so efficient they'll travel more than 10,000 miles or 16,000 kilometres on 4.5 litres of petrol. The Shell Eco Marathon is held annually to find the world's most fuel-efficient car. Competitors construct a vehicle that meets the required safety aspects and run it around a circuit using as little fuel as possible. The best design considers aspects of aerodynamics, rolling resistance, engine efficiency, and driving techniques to achieve the highest fuel economy. Before each race, the fuel tanks are filled to the brim. Each car carries no more than half a cup of petrol. In the workshop, the engineers and specialists tinker. The key to the unbelievable fuel economy is a combination of the right weight, correct body compound, and of course, a secret mechanical formula. Once he's lowered himself into the pod, the rules of the race say the driver must continue until he runs out of petrol. To save weight, most of the drivers are children. And at this school, the engineers are children too. The technology in these cars may one day help us all to drive ultra fuel-efficient cars. In the future, we may only need to fill up our tanks once a year. Leading British charity MenCap has exhibited the work of artists with learning disabilities from 20 European countries. Me, Blue and You Against Discrimination highlighted the ability of the disabled and the need for them to have full access to the art world. It was a celebrity launch for this exhibition, with pop, radio and television stars lending their support. Those behind the show said art is an important means of communication for the disabled. Many of the artworks have come from artists around Europe. They highlighted a range and depth of work. Amongst them, two British artists, Diani Hunsum and Tony Moore, whose pictures were inspired by visits to the Tate Modern and Tate Britain museums. Their tutor says they have confidence and ability.
Diabetes and desserts don't go together. That's the misconception many people have. But the American Diabetes Association has put out new guidelines which say otherwise. According to Dr. Reza Levitin of the Washington Hospital Center, as long as diabetics balance their sugar intake with insulin or other medication and exercise, occasional sweet treats are permissible. What's important, she says, is moderation. As long as diabetics keep their blood sugar levels under control and the total intake of starches and sugars is kept in balance, eating an ice cream won't do any harm. Studies have shown that proper nutrition is comparable to drug treatment for controlling diabetes. But according to the American Diabetics Association, nutrition therapy is often ignored or not followed properly. The association hopes the new guidelines will be easier for diabetics to follow. According to the International Diabetics Federation, there are now more than 150 million adult diabetics worldwide, and the disease has become epidemic in many developed countries. So prevention of the disease has become as important as treating it. A recent study of the US National Institutes of Health indicates nutrition and exercise go hand in hand and can cut diabetes risk by up to 60%.
The Rio Earth Summit, held in June 1992, put in place a program for creating sustainable development to cut poverty and protect the world's environment. Years on, environmental campaigners are impatient at the slow pace of change. The World Wildlife Fund organised a conference as a wake-up call to politicians and decision makers. It's estimated that more than 1 billion people in the world live in poverty, and the international fight against it is intrinsically linked with protecting the environment. The World Wildlife Fund argues that industrialised countries bear a heavy responsibility for the impact of their consumption on the Third World. The airship industry died more than 60 years ago with the Hindenburg disaster. But the manufacturers of the Zeppelin NT hope that the idea will rise like a phoenix and become as popular now as it was in the early part of the 20th century. The purchasers, the Nippon Airship Corporation of Japan, believe it is commercially viable too, and have purchased one from its German manufacturers. The Zeppelin NT, the NT's for new technology, is 75 metres long, a minnow compared to its giant predecessor, which was as long as 2 football pitches placed end to end. It's smaller, has a super light metal framework, and is safer. Zeppelin NT is inflated with helium, an inert gas that carries no risk of fire. The new model Zeppelin has 3 propellers, flies at about 100 kilometres per hour depending on wind speed, and at a height of about 2,000 metres. It can carry a complement of only 12 passengers and 2 crew members, compared to the Hindenburg, which carried more than 100. No passengers were on board for this journey. The airship's route from Germany took it over 10 countries on a 15,000 kilometre journey to Japan. The new ship is destined for sightseeing and advertising flights over Japan. Scared of losing your pooch? In Japan, that may soon become a thing of the past. Japan's largest home and office security provider, Seacom Co Limited, thinks it can offer the paranoid pet owner a little peace of mind. It's unveiled a device that can make looking for lost pets as easy as browsing the net. In fact, that's all there is to do. A GPS tracker reduced in size to fit around a dog's collar can pinpoint the location of the pet from a website, and that can be browsed either on the computer or on one's mobile phone screen. Once located and reunited, pets and owners can be assured that they will never be parted again. Owners can place a sensor, which Seacom says is the world's smallest and lightest mobile GPS terminal at 48 grams, around the dog's neck in a small pouch or on its back using a full body harness. The company says the sensor might be too heavy for small dogs and cats. The technology is an extension of a similar service for tracking young children, the elderly, and missing automobiles. A state-of-the-art British fishing research vessel, Endeavour, cost £24 million. This 73-metre research ship is home to 19 scientists and 16 crew. Their job is to gather and analyse data on the whole marine environment. The ship uses stealth technology, normally used by submarines and surface ships, to keep a constant eye on the fish stocks around the UK. It's fitted with a very sophisticated sonar suite, which enables it to measure not only shoals of fish and seabed characteristics, but it can also send out sound waves which can actually produce a 3D image of the seabed and produce habitat mapping and such things as trawl tracks on the seabed. The Endeavour is also one of the quietest research vessels. It radiates very little underwater noise, which means it doesn't scare the fish away. Endeavour is also there to monitor the quality of seawater and the role and significance of marine biodiversity. Endeavour is a genuine platform for marine science to ensure that present fish stocks not only survive, but can grow in as strong an environment as possible.
For many, the worst part of ageing is giving up independent living. That's why engineers at the University of Virginia developed a discreet and affordable method to turn the homes of the elderly into smart houses that can alert caregivers of emergencies, lifestyle changes, and health concerns. The base system is a simple set of motion detectors that transmit the inhabitants' household movements to concerned family members or physicians who can better assess quality of life questions, knowing how much time is spent in bed or how many trips to the refrigerator is the norm. A more sophisticated version will one day collect health-related data. Floor sensors will detect erratic walking patterns and take blood pressure readings through the soles of the feet, while the toilet can gather everything from glucose levels to kidney abnormalities. A consistent data stream of these basic vital signs is a huge asset for seniors who strive to age in place, and an assurance that healthcare is practically next door.
Autumn leaves may add colour to a train journey, but this natural debris is also a very real hazard and can seriously delay travellers when trains are forced to slow down. The British are adapting an environmentally friendly approach, and it's attracting interest from rail companies throughout the world. £50 billion each year is invested in Britain's railways to counter this problem. Crews work through the night, clearing leaves and other debris off the 21,000 miles of the nation's rails. It's a challenge that never ends. The latest advance is laser technology. 2 prototype trains equipped with lasers were tested before being brought into full-time operation. The wheels get hot as they run on the rails, and the leaves get almost baked on, forming a kind of glass-like Teflon substance. A laser fitted to the train burns the leaves off the rails very easily. Leaves on rail lines cause an average of £10 million damage each year, and laser technology is at the forefront of driving down the cost and lost travelling time. British neuroscientists have pioneered a breakthrough brain scanning technique that offers hope to people suffering chronic depression that cannot be treated by conventional drugs and therapy. On average, 1 of 4 people suffer from some kind of mental illness, mostly depression. Of these patients, many are successfully treated with drugs or therapy, but for up to 20% of people who suffer from depression, nothing currently available can cure a desperate condition. New hope for such desperate cases has come as a result of a breakthrough by British and overseas experts at the Clinical Neuroscience Research Centre in Dartford, east of London. Using harmless and non-invasive magnetic resonance imaging scanning techniques, doctors have discovered key differences in brain activity between healthy individuals compared to those suffering treatment-resistant depression. By deciphering complex activity in the human brain, researchers have opened the way for new treatments for people who would otherwise face a bleak and uncertain outlook. Terms like global illumination, subsurface scattering, and hyperreality may make you believe that scientists are talking about a comet hurtling towards Earth. In fact, these terms refer to techniques used in the making of DreamWorks' production of Shrek 2, which used breakthrough technology to create its animated effects. Technology advanced in a number of ways that made Shrek 2 bigger, better, and more beautiful than Shrek 1. In Shrek 2, there was a lot more human characters than in Shrek 1. So animators spent a lot of time bringing up the level of what the human characters looked like, focusing on little things like different hair systems, ways to deal with hair and fur so that it looked beautiful, perfect, and moved nicely. The hair would look more believable. Shrek 2 was more intricate and more detailed in such a way that it was able to present a picture more realistic. They spent time developing rain systems and moving clouds for dramatic scenes where clouds rolled in, even snow. With new lighting techniques, they developed what's called a shader or subsurface scattering. It provided a translucency level to the skin. So in Shrek 2, there was more fur, more hair, more water, more smoke, more rain effects, more fire. All of the things that were hard when they were making Shrek 1. Those who worked on Shrek 2 made sure that this movie was a whole new feast for the eyes. The Euro NCAP announced findings on car safety after subjecting 18 car models to violent front and side crashes. 6 Western European governments, several drivers' associations and consumer groups fund this association in an effort to improve car safety for both passengers and pedestrians. Overall, Euro NCAP found automakers have vastly improved safety for passengers, though progress in making cars less lethal for pedestrians involved in crashes was too slow. 4 of the 18 models tested in this phase were awarded the maximum rating of 5 stars for passenger safety, and a 4-star rating was the norm, as opposed to 1 or 2 stars 5 years before. The overall star performer amongst these 18 models was the new Renault Megane, which scored 5 stars for passenger safety and 2 for pedestrian protection. No model gained more than 2 stars for pedestrian protection, and one car, Suzuki's Grand Vitara, was the first ever tested by Euro NCAP to receive no star at all in that category. Euro NCAP said automakers were reluctant to invest in making cars safer for pedestrians because consumers were not prepared to pay a premium to protect people outside their vehicle. Euro NCAP also found injury risks were higher for small children, even with special child restraints, than for adults. Euro NCAP said modern child protection already on offer is far better than no protection at all. With pedestrians, there has been some progress, but they would like to see much more progress than they're currently seeing.
People suffering from type 2 diabetes who incorporate stress management techniques into their lives can dramatically reduce blood sugar levels, according to US researchers. Scientists at Duke University Medical Centre report that stress-busting techniques like relaxation and breathing exercise, as well as everyday stress management, are cost-effective ways to help control type 2 diabetes. In a study, patients' blood sugar levels and anxiety levels were measured. All of the patients in the stress management group showed a 0.5% reduction in their glucose level, while 32% lowered their glucose by 1%. According to the World Health Organization, between 120 and 140 million people live with diabetes worldwide. By the year 2025, these figures are expected to double.
British Olympic athletes from a variety of disciplines lined up in their Adidas sportswear in London. There was no doubt they looked good, but that wasn't the object, said Adidas. This kit had been designed to keep the athletes cool in the searing heat they'd encounter in Athens. And that could be the difference between winning and losing. This garment is what Adidas calls ClimaCool technology, a range of fabrics that breathe, encouraging sweat to evaporate and therefore keeping athletes cool. Adidas have placed the fabrics in heat-intensive areas of the bodies, even on the backs of athletes' necks. So how does ClimaCool work? The fabrics have hundreds of small indents on the side next to the body. These indents channel sweat outwards from the body and across the surface of the garment, maximising microventilation across the body. Other ventilation channels funnel cool air inside the garment and carry warm, moist air away. The effect is like a chimney. Adidas worked with scientists at Britain's Loughborough University to develop the fabric. This new invention from Adidas was a big hit with the athletes. DNA is the genetic material in the cells of your body. It's a sort of photo album of valuable medical information. With advancements in medical technology, decoding the information in these genes could one day give doctors the ability to predict an individual's future health, and perhaps even head off diseases before they develop. When Tim Rawson's father died of prostate cancer, Tim discovered he had requested his DNA be stored. So Tim contacted DNA Bioscience Today. The procedure itself is very simple. Blood from a pinprick is smeared onto a chemically treated card, which is then sent off for laboratory analysis. This company will store the DNA for 25 years, and relatives are given a certificate and DNA profile. With a 75% cremation rate in Britain, DNA Bioscience Today have realised the importance of preserving precious genetic data that is currently being destroyed when a person is cremated. DNA Biosciences Today guarantees that samples will not be used for genetic research and will only be made available to people who are legally authorised in accordance with the UK Genes Direct white paper. Rajab Muhammad was handicapped at birth, but he's learned to live without the use of his hands and continues to work as a watchmender using his feet. At his birth, no doctor was able to supervise, and his shoulder was dislocated as he was born, resulting in the loss of the use of his hands. Every task in his daily life is carried out using his feet. From shaving in the morning to answering the telephone. He became interested in watches at the age of 13 and started going around the watch shops in downtown Cairo to ply his trade. He is now the father of a young son who seems keen to go down the same road. Albeit fixing watches with his fingers, it's not his terms. Mobile phones. Parents use them to keep track of their kids, something their children may find a nuisance. But what about a text service that lets youngsters send the details of a trip to a friend before they go? The technology is called Safety Text and was the brainchild of Tim Blackman, a British man whose daughter went missing in Japan. Lucy Blackman's remains were found months later, but the police investigation was hindered by a lack of information. Mr. Blackman's idea allows users to send a delayed text with vital details to a secure system. The technology is simple. To use the system, you go to the website and register online. Registered users can send a text message to the service before they go out, saying where they are heading or who is going with them. The text is held on a database for a period specified by the user. If the text is not cancelled before the deadline, an alert is sent to a friend or relative. The system also stores a user profile, including a photograph which may be accessed by police if events become serious.
Manoeuvring around buildings and busy streets, the air ambulance is a vital lifesaver in cities across Britain, taking victims to hospital without the delays caused by road traffic. In this case, the London Air Ambulance is responding to a different kind of emergency, the need to raise funds to keep emergency helicopters flying. The Virgin corporate empire boss and entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson volunteered to become patron of the first nationwide charity foundation for air ambulance services across Britain. Sir Richard has been rescued on 4 occasions by helicopter in various mad escapades he had at sea, and felt that he needed to give something back. London, believe it or not, did not have a fully funded air ambulance service. Bringing separate regional helicopter services together under the one organisation, the new Air Ambulance Foundation aims to raise money more effectively. All air ambulance services in Britain rely on charity. Able to evacuate emergency cases to hospital far quicker than by road, every helicopter in service saves more than 20 lives a year. More importantly, fast transport to a hospital speeds rehabilitation for thousands of injured people carried, preventing many from long-term disabilities. Last year, more than 7,000 people were rushed to hospital by air ambulance.
The vibrant colours signal clear intent. This car is for a new generation to zip around town or zoom off to the beach. And although the B-Up is open to the air, there is a power-packed heater on board to put some warmth into those colder days. The name Reliant, once synonymous with the slightly comic three-wheeler Robin, is now set to become part of British cool with its new badge carrier. The first cars were left-hand drive, but right-hand drive models for the British and Middle East markets are now about. Out on the road, the B-Up is good-looking, nimble and quick. It's powered by a 505cc petrol engine, and while this is a small half-litre unit, it's good for 60 miles per hour, yet returns up to 75 miles per gallon. It's lightweight in nature, something like 330 kilograms in weight, which is why it achieves the fuel economy it does. It's styled by Gucciardo Design, a name more commonly associated with Italian road racing thoroughbreds, and made by the French manufacturer Ligier. Buyers in Britain can join in the fun for a cheapish price, and for just a little more, they can have a pair of city bumpers to mix it in traffic with the big and the small. This convention at Birmingham in the Midlands brought together some of the 85,000 people who live in Britain with multiple sclerosis, or MS. The MS Society in Britain has been sponsoring research and offering practical help to sufferers and their families for over 50 years, and is keen to offer its expertise more widely. MS causes damage to myelin, the protective sheath around the nerves. For some, this means intermittent loss of muscle control and function. For others, it's a steady decline towards paralysis. Researchers are trying to understand why the body attacks itself in this way. A virus can trigger the immune system to cause the damage to the myelin. And what the scientists want to do is try and stop the immune system attacking itself. There are lots of ways they can do that. They can stop the cells going into the brain. Other researchers are trying to understand how the myelin repair system in the body functions and what makes it break down. While hopes are high that a cure for the disease is at last on the horizon, leading as active a life as possible is still the priority for the millions of MS sufferers around the world. Classrooms in London all look like this. Students and teachers working on screen using educational software and other data downloaded from the internet. Using a giant intranet system called Digital Brain, the London Grid for Learning enables students to do coursework online using a PC, laptop, or even digital television. Several educational publishers prepare interactive computer material specifically for inclusion in this London-wide grid. If it takes off, Digital Brain will be available at schools around the world. Young and old Argentine cooks gather in the rear of a natural food store in Buenos Aires. They include not only wives and mothers, but cafeteria cooks, drawn here not for an affinity to healthy living, but for a cheap source of food for their families and clients. While Argentina has always been known for its beef, soy is actually the country's largest export, and the South American nation ranks as the world's third largest exporter of soy. An excellent source of nutrition, the versatility of soybeans increases its appeal. At demonstrations in one Buenos Aires health food store, Angelita de Biansale gives classes on making bread, crackers, noodles and milk out of soy. But the shift to cooking with soy has been fueled by economic, not nutritional factors, as the country's financial crisis drags on. With almost half of its population living below the poverty level and 1/4 of its people unemployed, the number of malnourished children is growing. Approximately 40,000 people attended the classes offered throughout the country. They included individuals and representatives of at least 2,000 institutions. Many of those institutions receive soybeans donated by soy producers to combat hunger in cafeterias and food kitchens. The cooks of Buenos Aires San Pablo House for Homeless Children have completed the course and now know how to make soy pizzas for the 40 adolescents who live there. The children at San Pablo House are fed milk, juice, bread, hamburgers, and even coffee made with soy. The results of an MRI scan like this will end up on a patient's medical file, along with a wealth of other data like X-rays and consultants' notes. Normally, a hard copy of the data has to be physically moved between medical personnel, often resulting in delays and confusion. Now a system known as the Patient Record Library System, or PIRLIS, allows hospital staff and clinicians to access all this information via the internet.
Probably also on the right.
It's the only system in the world that can share all forms of electronic images. Doctors can carry such information on a handheld device on visits to patients' homes. Hospital staff can access medical records at a patient's bedside or in the operating theatre. PIRLIS was developed at London's Imperial College. It's being tested at present with encouraging results. A study carried out by Oxford University has helped researchers understand how fungi breaks down wood and how this is able to benefit other plants. Researchers also found that fungi send out distinct pulses. It is these pulses that are believed to carry nutrients to the surrounding plant life. Scientists discovered how to observe the way in which the mycelium of fungi, that being the underground network of threads, carries nutrients, and for the first time were able to see this as a light trace, so they've been able to digitize and analyze it. The analysis revealed that the transport of nutrients goes in a pulse. When they looked at the pulse, it turned out to be remarkably regular. So, every 11 hours, there was a surge, which could be seen as a flash of nutrients moving across the mycelium. The team at Oxford were also able to monitor the speed at which nitrogen was taken up and distributed, helping them to further understand the nutrient cycle in woodland soils.
Five and a half years after becoming the world's first cloned sheep, researchers reported that Dolly has developed arthritis, raising fears that the cloning process may have given her a genetic defect. Professor Ian Wilmut of Scotland's Roslin Institute says that Dolly developed arthritis in her left hind leg at an unusually young age. In 1996, Dolly was cloned from a somatic cell taken from an adult animal. Some scientists speculate that because Dolly was cloned using genetic material from a 6-year-old ewe, her genetic age might be closer to 11 years. After Dolly's debut, researchers around the world have cloned several mammal animals, including cows. In the US, researchers hope to produce the world's first cloned allergen-free cats.
At first glance, it's a curious sight and raises a laugh or two. But the man carrying the high glider, the other people dressed in white overalls, and the birds are all players in an important wildlife preservation project. This small flock of white Russian cranes will set off on a long and dangerous journey to cross Siberia and reach their usual wintering habitats in India and Iran. And to help them on their way, Italian adventurer and wildlife campaigner Angelo Derigo. Equipped with a motorized high glider, Derigo hoped to persuade the cranes to follow him south across Siberia along a safe route into warmer climes before the onset of winter. The Italian was assisted by Russian wildlife experts who acted as costumed parents to the cranes, dressed in white and with their faces covered. They spent time with the young cranes bred in captivity, hand-feeding them and trying to persuade the birds to see them as their parents. The setting is Oksky Nature Reserve, some 400 kilometers southeast of Moscow, where Russian wildlife experts are engaged in a breeding program to save the white Russian crane from extinction. Derigo, who has flown with eagles across the Sahara Desert in North Africa, lived at the Oksky Nature Reserve for 5 weeks and tried to learn to fly his high glider like an adult white crane. Before the journey began, Derigo and wildlife experts faced another difficult task: to persuade the young cranes to believe that the Italian with his flying machine is a parent crane whom they should follow and not be afraid of. To do this, the high glider is kept near the bird's enclosure and cranes are hand-fed near the glider while the engine is running. In order to survive in the wild and find food by themselves, the cranes must not see humans. So Derigo and the wildlife experts wore white overalls and kept their faces covered. The director of the Oksky Nature Reserve hoped the project will help save the white Russian cranes and allow migrating flocks to be directed to safe habitats. Only 20 white crane families are left in the wilderness of Siberia, and it is Russia's responsibility to the world to save these birds.
To find more alternative ways to treat cocaine addiction, US physicians turned to acupuncture in hopes that the Asian art could help the 3.5 million American cocaine addicts kick the habit. Because acupuncture was found useful in treating heroin withdrawal, 400 programs sprang up around the country hoping it would have the same effect on cocaine addicts. But the results of a clinical trial on the effects of acupuncture on 600 addicts concluded that the ancient art was not very successful. Dr. Herbert Kleber of Columbia University said that over the past 20 years, more than 40 medications had been tried to help addicts wean themselves off cocaine. Part of the difficulty is the highly addictive nature of the drug. When the drug is ingested, it produces an intense euphoric feeling that is better than food, sex, or work.
The US National Aeronautics and Space Administration warned that a glacier in Peru's Andes Mountains could break apart and cause an avalanche in a populated valley. But local geologists said the US agency was being alarmist. NASA said its Terra satellite had detected an ominous crack in the Cupey Glacier, calling it a potential glacial disaster in the making near the tourist town of Huaraz, 168 miles north of Lima. The agency wrote that a large glacier chunk could break off and fall into the lake, causing a flood that could reach its tens of thousands of residents in less than 15 minutes. The NASA warning was splashed across the front pages of several tabloid newspapers in Peru, reviving memories of an earthquake and avalanche which killed about 70,000 people near Huaraz 25 years ago. Benjamin Arneo Morales, head of the Andean Geological Institute and considered Peru's leading expert on glaciers, said it is normal for Andean glaciers to have thousands of cracks, but inaccurate that an avalanche would reach Huaraz in 15 minutes. He said the report had alarmed the local people. He analysed it and saw that what NASA said was not certain because they had detected a crack in the Palgarachul Glacier, which could produce an avalanche that could cause a flood. It was not possible to solely rely on the satellite images to determine this, as it was not definite that the glacier when, nor what volume, or even that the glacier would actually fall. Huaraz is a prime climbing and hiking destination for both Peruvian and foreign tourists.
Ginkgo biloba is a popular supplement intended to combat the mild memory loss that often frightens people as they grow older. But the herb that generates millions of dollars a year in sales and is in everything from pills to fruit juice may be doing takers no good at all. A study says that a large percentage of those downing the memory boosters are swallowing empty promises. Dr. Paul Solomon ran the study at Williams College in Massachusetts. Researchers followed 230 people over age 60 who were in good physical and mental shape. Half took ginkgo 3 times a day for 6 weeks, the amount recommended by the manufacturer, and the other half took sugar pills. 6 weeks later, participants and their spouses reported no change.
Scientists call it the most comprehensive health scan check yet of the globe. The European Space Agency's latest observation satellite has been transmitting the most detailed pictures back to their research headquarters in Frascati, Italy. The satellite, Envisat, is up there to monitor environmental pollution and climate change and gradually build up a 3D profile of the Earth's oceans, land and polar ice caps. This is the Antarctic Peninsula, and as many people will know, a major ice shelf weighing 500 billion tons collapsed, and you can see all of the fragments streaming out into the Weddell Sea. The satellite will be able to see all parts of the world. This area is of West Africa. The European scientists believe it will play a major part in helping to predict the impact of human activity on global change. It's the climax of some 10 years of research and development by the agency. The image quality is very impressive, a real improvement on previous imaging radars. This technology should put Europe at the forefront of Earth observation.